Wow, what a great season!
Dragons do not do well in captivity.
How do you know this?
That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
Game of Thrones, Season 6. Alright, so this is the 6th season of Game of Thrones. Now, this was a season I was a little worried about. I wasn't the biggest fan of Season 5. Don't get me wrong, Season 5 was pretty good. The Hard Home episode was amazing. But Season 5, I was a little disappointed with. But Season 6, it upped the ante. First off, this was the first season where we did not have the source material of George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones series, A Song of Ice and Fire, to rely on. So, for the first time in a long time, I was in the dark. I had no idea what was going on, and it was terrifyingly awesome. And the way I do Game of Thrones reviews is I have to talk spoilers. If I don't talk spoilers, I can't talk about the show. So, if you've not seen Season 6 of Game of Thrones, get the hell away from this screen and go watch Game of Thrones and come back and watch. Alright? If you're still watching, I either expect that you've watched Season 6 or you just don't care. So the way I'm going to break it down is I'm going to break down each storyline, the King's Landing storyline, the Dany storyline, all these storylines, that way I can just talk Game of Thrones. Because Melisandre came to Castle Black, and remember back in Season 3, they got a character with the one eye could bring people back to life because he was a priestess of the Red God. She brings back Jon Snow, and Jon Snow says, I'm done with the Night's Watch, I can't stay anymore, I can't stay here anymore, these people betrayed me. He kind of has his mini Red Wedding, if you really want to think about it. Jon Snow says, I'm going to quit, I'm done, I did what I thought was best, and I died for it. And he just wanted to quit everything. Meanwhile, in the north, we have Sansa and Theon Greyjoy. They're running away from Ramsay's hounds. And they're getting ready to get killed or captured by Ramsay's men until Captain Phasma shows up, or what's known as Brienne of Tarth and Podrick Payne. Now these two, they save him. Theon decides to go off his way. One of the great things about this scene, though, was you see Brienne of Tarth, she swears her fealty to Sansa, just like it was just a mirror image of what happened in Season 2. That's what I really liked about this season, was they did a really great thing of mirroring events from other seasons into this season. And it didn't feel forced, it just felt really natural. Theon says, I can't go with you. I have to pay for my crimes. I have to go home. So he goes home. I'll talk about that in a bit. So Sansa, Brienne, and Podrick, they head north to the Wall to meet up with her brother, Jon Snow. And Sansa shows up, says, hey, we should take back Winterfell. Jon Snow's like, no, I am not getting involved anymore. I just can't do this anymore. I died. I can't do this. Until a little letter from Ramsay shows up saying, Dear Jon Snow, bastard, I have your brother Rickon. Give me back my wife, and I'll let your men live in peace. And Jon Snow was like, I can't have that. So he gathers up the men he has from the free folk, the wildlings, gathers up as many Northern lords as he can to fight Ramsay Bolton. And there are some cool characters. Like, first off, Lady Mormont. We've seen many Mormonts in this show. We've seen Jeor Mormont, the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. We see Jorah Mormont, or what's known as Lord Friendstone. And this one probably was a great character. She was such a good actress. Being how young she is, she was so great. Her dialogue was just amazing to see. And they're trying to gather up allies in the north, and it's not working. Jon Snow, he's kind of failing. And Sansa says, we need more men. We can't do this. Jon Snow says, we have to go with what we got. Winter is coming. If we wait any longer, it's going to be bad for us. But most Northern lords don't want to follow Jon Snow because he let the wildlings through the door. The wildlings raped and killed the Northern lords, and you can get it. That's one thing I like. You get the point of view of each of the lords that they are trying to get. Sansa, this is one character who has, I believe, gotten better and better as the show has progressed along. Unlike another Stark character, which I'll talk in a bit, which I just don't care for her much anymore. But Sansa, she's playing the game. She's been taught by the best, by Cersei, by Littlefinger. She's such a game player. And that's what I really liked about Sansa. She writes a letter to Littlefinger to call the Knights of the Vale, aid Jon Snow and the men at the Battle of Winterfell, or whatever it was called. And episode 9, the Battle of Asterisk, it wasn't like the other episodes, the Battle of the Wall or the Battle of Blackwater Bay. This was a straight up battle. And this episode was directed by the guy who did the Hardhome episode back in season 5. And the battle was so amazing. I hadn't seen movies look this good cinematically. This was really the most straight up battle. It was army versus army. It was basically a medieval battle mixed with like Roman style fighting. Because in the Roman history, you had Hannibal, who he had his men, they cornered the Romans up to a cliff, and they just poked them off the cliff. That's what happened in the history. And then you also had all the bodies stacking up where they were climbing up. It reminded me of stories I've heard from the Civil War about the Battle of Antietam, where bodies were stacked so high, the soldiers had to climb up bodies just to get to fight anyone. It was so claustrophobic, you couldn't do anything. It was so breathtaking. Just the battle alone was amazing. And now I have to give a shout out to Ramsay Bolton. You've been a great villain for these 4 seasons of Game of Thrones. I've really enjoyed you. The actor that plays you is really well done. One of the best villains of Game of Thrones. I think you got surpassed the last episode. I'll talk about that in a bit. But he was so good, and the way he goes out is so great. I mean, I really liked Ramsay. I mean, I liked him as a character. I loved him as a villain. And a show is only as powerful as its villains. And one thing you get about Ramsay, you get it. And you get why he does what he does. So they take back Winterfell. Jon Snow, Sansa, the Starks are back in Winterfell. And you're like, yeah, they're back. We haven't seen this since season 2. And Jon Snow's with the Lords. And all the Lords. It was, once again, a mirror scene of the season 1, episode 10 episode. Where all the Lords are at the battlefield. Where they all pronounce Robb Stark King of the North. And they do it again. They proclaim Jon Snow King of the North. Such a great scene. Also, I think one thing we're going to get as the show progresses, well, at least for Jon Snow and Sansa's storyline, is there's going to be some tension between Jon Snow and Sansa, because without Sansa, this doesn't happen. She's the one they call the Knights of the Vale. She is really the Lady of Winterfell. And I'm curious to see what happens with this storyline. Does Sansa remain faithful? Does she become more like Littlefinger? Does she keep playing the Game of Thrones? I'll be curious to see, and there's so many good things about this storyline. I love seeing Davos back. I love Davos Seaworth. He's one of my favorite characters. Just the actor that plays him is so good. Right, now let's move on to another Stark storyline. We're moving on to everyone's favorite Stark, Bran. I'm not a fan of Bran. He missed season 5, and I was like, okay, whatever. So Bran, he's training to become the new Three-Eyed Raven. Three-Eyed Raven is kind of like an information broker. They have magic powers or something. And one thing I liked about this was they said they would never use flashbacks as a way to tell the story. But Bran's powers is he could touch the willow tree, the tree of the Godwood, and he could see green dreams back in the past. Like my favorite dreams that he had was a dream called Ned Stark battle against the loyal members who were guarding his sister, Lyanna Stark, otherwise known as the Tower of Joy. I had heard stories of Tower of Joy from the first Game of Thrones book I read. And the battle was so cool to see. Just the guy fighting with 2 swords, and he was such a badass. It was incredible to see. But Bran makes a mistake. He lets the Night King touch him. And we also find out how the White Walkers are made. The children in the forest, the people that are kind of like elves, are the ones who create the White Walkers. And the reason they did it was because the children of the forest and the First Men were at war with each other. And they created the White Walkers to fight against the First Men. And you know what that sounds like? The atomic bomb. And I really like that. I like how they use history in a way like this. So they have to escape. They have to escape the little cave. The White Walkers are coming for them. Hodor dies because he's Hodor! And just, wow. Hodor! Hodor! They are trying to escape the north. They're trying to get back south beyond the wall, and they get saved by an unlikely person who I thought was dead. Benjen Stark. That's right, Benjen Stark from season 1, the brother of Ned Stark. In the books, there's a character called Cold Hands who was a White Walker, who was kind of a good guy, but you didn't really know much about him. Come to find out, they really made him. They made Benjen Stark into Cold Hands, and I really liked that. It was great to see the actor again. There's not much more else to talk about the Bran storyline, other than we find out that Bran learns who Jon Snow's parents is, and R plus L equals J, otherwise known as Rhaegar Targaryen, the son of Mad King Aerys Targaryen, and Lyanna Stark had a kid named Jon. At Lyanna's deathbed, she made Ned promise her that you will keep my son alive. Take him as your own. Because if Robert Baratheon found out that Rhaegar had impregnated the love of his life, Lyanna, he would kill the kid right there on the spot. The only way Jon could have saved the kid was if he took him as his own. And he promised he would never tell anyone. And it caused tension between his wife. Maybe if he told Catelyn, maybe things would turn out completely different. But it was so great to see. Because I knew it, but it was finally cool to see it confirmed. And that means Jon Snow has the best claim to the Iron Throne, even more than Dany. Because the son of a firstborn son of a king has a better claim than a third kid to the throne. Let's move on to the Stark I'm kind of getting sick of seeing, who's basically become Dexter. And that's Arya Stark. Now, at the end of the last season, she had become blind, and Arya's still trying to become a faceless man, but she can't let herself go. She can't become no one. And this was a storyline that dragged on for way too long. And when it finally ended, I was like, oh, thank God, it's finally over. And I just love seeing Arya is pretty much a psychopath right now. The last scene of the shot of the season, where Arya is talking to Walder Frey, and she takes off her mask, and she had pretty much flayed a bunch of her Walder Frey's kids, and she says, "My name's Arya Stark. I want you to know this because I want the last face that you ever see is me, a Stark, smiling at you." And she smiles so casually as she slits the throat of Walder Frey, just the way that Catelyn had got killed at the end of season 3 at the Red Wedding. It once again mirrors, but I'm worried for the Arya character because it's the simplest storyline. Revenge. Okay. Revenge doesn't go well for most stories we know of. So, good luck to Arya. I'm kind of worried about her. She's a bit of a psychopath. She's no longer that little sweet Arya Stark character we used to know. Now she's a freaking serial killer right now. I'm worried about her character. Meanwhile, at King's Landing, we still have the High Septon, or I said the High Sparrow, still creating chaos for Cersei, Marjorie, and all the people. Everyone's like, let's get rid of them. Jaime comes up with a plan to stop them. It doesn't really work out too well. Jaime gets kicked out of the King's Watch, and Cersei says, take control of our army. Be the leader the army needs. And Jaime goes off to River Run. I'll get back to the High Sparrow stuff in a minute. So Jaime, he and Bronn, they go off to River Run. River Run, if you remember, was the head of House Tully. Remember Blackfish? Blackfish took a little piss break at the Red Wedding. And he kind of saved himself from dying, pretty much. Jaime goes off to River Run to liberate it back into the name of House Frey. Jaime's negotiating with Blackfish. He's like, come on, stand down. I'll let your men rest in peace. You'll be good. And Blackfish is like, nah, we'll die the last man. He's like, hundreds of us will die, but how many thousands of you will die? He's like, as long as I live, the war continues. And then we see an unlikely character show up. Well, we see Brienne of Tarth, because back in the North storyline, Sansa had heard from Littlefinger that the Blackfish has taken back River Run. So Sansa sends Brienne to go to River Run to negotiate to get the Blackfish to join up with Jon Snow and help him fight against Ramsay Bolton. It doesn't turn out well, but it was great to see Brienne and Jaime together. Now moving back on to the King's Landing storyline. Now Cersei, she's getting a little nuts, to be honest with you. She has the Mountain guy, who's pretty much a zombie at this point. She is fighting. She is trying to stay alive. She knows that she's good because she's going to order a trial by combat. And since she has the mountain, no one's going to defeat the mountain. I mean, Oberyn tried, and now he's even more scary than he ever was. But Tommen, here's the thing about Tommen. He's useless. He's so manipulated. In early season, he was manipulated by Cersei. He was manipulated by Tywin. He was manipulated by Marjorie. Marjorie again, the High Septon. There are so many characters pulling this guy's strings. And he says, by royal decree, trial by combat is done. No more trial by combat. Which means Cersei will actually have to be tried by faith. Which is not good for Cersei, because she would lose. So she kind of becomes the Mad Queen at this point. The last episode, just the first 20 minutes of the episode, the piano playing, it was shot so beautifully. I could not even imagine. It was so great. And she burns the set to the ground. She kills thousands of characters, because we had learned back in season 3 when Jaime told the story of the Mad King to Brienne of Tarth in the hot tub about how the Mad King had put bunch of wildfire all across King's Landing to burn it to the ground, and she burned a set. And the one character I did not expect to die was Marjorie. I did not see that coming. So bravo to Game of Thrones, and it was done so excellent. And then we see Tommen. He sees all of it. He takes off his crown, gets out the window, and jumps and kills himself. Now all of Cersei's children are dead. Tyrion Lannister once said back in season 2, you love your children. That's your one redeeming quality. That and your cheekbones. Now Cersei, without the love of her children, it's a scary thought. It's going to be really interesting to see. She's probably going to become the Mad Queen Cersei, like the Mad King was. She's going nuts pretty much. But there are so many, like, whenever the Master Qyburn, he had all the children attack Maester Pycelle. That was so Julius Caesar right there. There were so many great Shakespearean moments just in that moment. There's a bunch of Shakespearean moments, all throughout Game of Thrones. Jaime returns and he sees that Cersei has been named Queen Cersei, the first of her name, Queen of the Andals and the First Men, and Protector of the Realm. She is the leader of the Lannister forces. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Alright, let's get to the storyline everyone wants to talk about. This was my second favorite storyline that was going on, the Dany storyline. Before I talk about Dany, I wanted to talk about the Theon and the Greyjoy storyline. So Theon returns back to the Iron Islands, to Yara Greyjoy, and Theon's like, I don't want to be king. And Balon Greyjoy dies by his brother, Euron Greyjoy. Now, if you remember for the Pirates of the Caribbean, the third movie, they had to elect a pirate king. That's how pirates are elected, and that's basically what happens. It was called a King's Moot. The lords kind of they had to elect a king or a queen. And this was such a, once again, a Julius Caesar Shakespeare moment. They were at the King's Moot. Yara was saying, it's like, support me, and I will take back the iron. I will make the Iron Islands great again. And they're all, the men are like, yeah! And then Euron comes out and says, he's like, I will show Daenerys Targaryen my dick, and I will show them all. And they're like, yeah! It was very much a Julius Caesar moment when you have Brutus had one, and they're like, yeah, screw Julius Caesar sucks. And Mark Anthony comes out there, yeah, screw Brutus and his men. It was just to see how fickle a crowd was. It was just a Shakespearean moment. Theon and Yara, they take the best ships that the Greyjoys have, and they decide, we're going to Meereen, we're going to make a deal with Daenerys Targaryen, and we're going to take back the Iron Islands. I'll talk about more about that, but I need to get to the Dany storyline. So first, let's talk about Daenerys. Daenerys, at the end of Season 5, she was surrounded by a Dothraki horde. Back to similar grounds, pretty much. Daenerys is taken captured, prisoner, pretty much, and when a cow dies, a Khaleesi is supposed to join like this motherhood of Dothraki people. But since she didn't go as soon as Khal Drogo died, the cows were trying to decide what to do with her. And Daenerys is like, no, I'm not playing this helpless role again. So she's in the tent. Now in the tent, as you know, in Boss Dothraki, the Dothraki are not allowed to use weapons. And this was such a great scene when Daenerys Targaryen says like, oh, none of you are coming alive. and she burns it to the ground. She burns it to the ground, and because fire can't hurt her, she's Daenerys Targaryen. Fire does not harm her. And she is and you see a scene where she walks out of the fire naked, once again. And you see all the men, they bow down to her. And they're like Daenerys Targaryen, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea. Great scene. Now let's get back to Meereen. We get back to Tyrion and Varys. Now Tyrion was kind of named the leader of the city. He's trying to get the city back together. He tries to make a deal with the slavers of Astapor, Yunkai, and Volantis. Now what he basically says to them is, he was like, slavery cannot continue. It's an evil practice. Meereen, it will never continue. Astapor, Yunkai, Volantis will allow you a 7-year grace period where we will pay you back in a time where we finally end slavery. Now, this was such a similar that Abraham Lincoln wanted to do. Abraham Lincoln, contrary to what people believe, the Civil War was not fought for slavery. Abraham Lincoln wanted slavery to end in a progressive, you can't just end it right out. He made the war about slavery eventually because he had to turn the focus to that. Because if he did not make the war about slavery, then the European countries were going to come into America to fight against the Union. That would not have turned out well for Abe Lincoln. So he made a war about slavery. But Abe Lincoln wanted to end slavery through a progressive amount of time. And it was just a smart tactical move by Tyrion. It really was. It was a great deal for the slavers. Unfortunately, they don't listen. Tyrion works with one of the Red Priestess to get the city united under Daenerys Targaryen. Meereen, after season 5, Meereen was kind of in a bunch of trouble, and they weren't trouble anymore until the slavers came back with an army, and they were like, we're pretty much screwed. And then we see Daenerys Targaryen riding on a dragon up to the high pyramids, and Tyrion's like, you have a plan. He's like, I'm going to burn them all. I'm going to kill them all. And Tyrion's like, hold down, slow down. That's something your father would have done. You have to be a little more minded. Let's think of more ideas before we kill everyone. Great scene by that moment. And Daenerys meets with the slavers of Yunkai, Astapor, and Volantis. And they think they're surrendering. And Daenerys is like, I think we're misunderstood. We're here to talk about your surrender. And they're like, please, you're screwed. And then they see a dragon. Daenerys gets on the dragon, the other 2 dragons, and they lay waste to the slavers' fleet. And that's a scary moment for anyone that hears about this from Westeros. Get ready, because things are coming. So Daenerys now has a fleet that she can travel to Westeros with. And then we see everyone's favorite Greyjoys, Theon and Yara, show up. And they tell them, we're like, we want to support you, but we want independence. Our ancestors took the Iron Islands away, and they gave it to the Greyjoys. We asked you to give them back. And they're asking for independence. And Daenerys says, it's like, alright, if you're going to do this, you're going to do this my way. You're like, there's going to be no more raping, pillaging. And Yara's like, that's our way. She's like, no more. Daenerys is like, no more. And Yara's like, no more. And she's like, we're going to create a better world than what our fathers created. At the end of the season, we see Daenerys with Tyrion. And Tyrion's like, are you ready? He's like, are you scared? And Dany's like, yeah. He's like, good. The Great Game's terrifying. And they're sailing off to Westeros. This is something we've been waiting to see since the first episode of season 1. And I'm so looking forward. Next season is just going to be insane. You have Jon Snow storyline with the King of the North. You have Daenerys coming to Westeros. Is she going to make it in time? Will she burn it all to the ground? Will we see Cersei go mad at the end? Who knows what's going to happen? So overall, season 6 of Game of Thrones was really well done. It's probably one of my favorite seasons. I don't really know which season is my favorite. I would have to rewatch them all, which I may do. But for now, this has been a really good season. It's one of the best seasons of Game of Thrones yet, and that's why I'm going to give Game of Thrones Season 6 an A+. Have you seen Game of Thrones? What are your thoughts? Comment below, let me know. Tell me, which king are you rooting for? Are you rooting for the White Walkers? Are you rooting for Jon Snow? Tell me below. If you like this video, click that thumbs up button and subscribe to see more, and tell your friends about Easy Nation. All too easy.